Martin.
Kia ora, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First to speak on the Parental Leave and Employment Protection 6 months paid leave amendment bill. I hope that members of the National Council of Women and the Business and Professional Women and the 52% of the voting public of New Zealand that are women have been watching the debate this evening. I hope that they have noted the behaviour of the National Party with regard to this bill, their attempt in the first instance, even taking a point of order in an attempt to collapse this bill. I have been here 3 years. It is the first time in 3 years I have seen that behaviour used to try and close down a bill that over 3,000 New Zealanders asked to be considered, and yet the government tried to not even address it. I am stunned, sir, by the way the National Party has chosen to deal with this issue. It is surprising and it is disappointing. Certainly, as previously we had such collegiality inside this House with a National Party member's bill. And I think it is really disappointing that the National Party was unable to rise to its feet and attempted to close down a bill so that they didn't have to stand before the public of New Zealand, particularly the 52% of the voting public who are women, and explain to them why they will veto this bill. Now, and they have the ability to veto it. So stand up in the place where you are and answer to the public why you will ignore their overwhelming submissions in support of it. And if you want to say that paternalistically it's all very nice and lovely that the New Zealand public, of whom we're supposed to represent, support this bill, it's all very nice and lovely to say that even though it is their money, taxpayers' money of New Zealand, who have come through the Select Committee process to this House and have overwhelmingly said this is what we want the government to do with our money, to then stand and say we know better, when at the same time spending $27 million on charter schools that not a single New Zealander came into this House and submitted needed to be here, at the same time spending millions of dollars of taxpayers' dollars on other things that they needed to actually give them the ability to rule, but that were not asked for by the public of New Zealand, and then to try and shut down the conversation, it's beyond belief. It's incredibly disappointing. So I do hope that those women's organisations are watching today and taking note of how this is being dealt with. This reminds me, sir, of there's a Kowhai festival in my town. Around about 15,000 people come there. And at the last Kowhai festival, we ran a survey. And the survey that we ran, it's not a very scientific survey. We stood there, we stopped people, and we said, what would your government like to do with your taxes? And the answers were quite interesting. And there was a clear division. And most of the women actually stopped and said, I'm quite happy to pay taxes, but I want the social contract to be there. I want the support for my family, I want the health care, I want the education for my children. They wanted their children to be supported. They were prepared to work, they were prepared to pay their taxes, they were prepared to do everything that the state asked of them as long as their children were cared for. And that's what this bill is about. And there's an old saying, sir, that where there is a will, there is a way. This government says that this bill is unaffordable. The government pushed through the smallest amount of support it could give to newborn babies in the budget to try and convince the public of New Zealand that they cared, whereas the reality was the pressure placed upon them by Sue Moroney, by the 26 Weeks campaign, made it almost impossible for them to say no. That is why two speakers, after they were unable to close down this debate, two speakers stood and read out their own bill. That's the only comment they have made. They have read out their own bill. So in an attempt to ignore what the public of New Zealand asked them to do, which was support Sue Moroney's bill. And where there is a will, there is a way. There is no will here for the women of New Zealand. There is no will here, and there never has been by this government. They have merely taken this moment and given the small crumbs that they could because they were forced to try and stay in the game. And I ask the women of New Zealand, the 52% of the voting public of New Zealand, don't feel guilty to ask for things that support your children. Don't hold back your vote. You ask, beg your pardon, the women of New Zealand should ask this government, we gave you our voice, we gave you our voice, support us, support our newborn babies. Now, and let's just go, the government tells you that this bill is far too expensive. So let's just go to another nation. So the Swedish parents are actually entitled to 480 days of paid parental leave when a child is born or adopted. And the one thing that the government did do that was very good inside the budget bill with regard to newborn children was when there are when children are placed in homes for life, they extended that to homes for life. And that is absolutely appropriate, and I applaud them for doing so. But of those 480 days, 60 days are reserved for fathers. In 2012, 24% of Swedish dads took the whole of the parental leave. For 390 of those days, parents are entitled to nearly 80% of their normal pay. The remaining 90 days are paid at a flat rate. Those who are not in employment are also entitled to parental leave. Why? Because it's parental leave. It's not an in-work family tax credit, it's parental leave. It's for the benefit of the child. We keep having a conversation about adults. The whole purpose of bills such as this is around for the benefit of the child. And yet we keep talking about, and Mr. O'Connor was the very one talking about over there, was talking about the adults inside this conversation. And that the women themselves should be standing up and being independent when Ms. Logie was talking. So I find that really interesting that that's and I'm sure Mr. Connor's going to rise to his feet, or perhaps he won't, because we're not sure how many calls the National Party will actually take on this. They didn't want to discuss it to start with, so they may not take it now. But we're yet to see. One of the great things about an extended parental leave, apart from what we know are cost savings around the health of the children, what we know are long-term benefits and economic benefits for families, because those women that can are able to breastfeed longer without stress. And anybody who's been a mother and been able to breastfeed will understand what stress does to the quality of that breastfeeding. So to remove stresses from mothers gives a better start to the baby. That's what this is about. It's about babies, not about women wanting to take skive off and take some time off. It's not about women asking any more from their government than they deserve. They are taxpayers too. But it's about the best start for babies. This government will veto this bill. That's obvious. They've stood up and they've said it. They've tried to shut it down already. But do not, New Zealand, do not allow them to let you know that we can't, to tell you that we can't afford it, because look at what else is being spent on. Do not tell them that you don't deserve it. Do not let them tell you that it makes no difference. This was an opportunity. This government has no will because ideologically it doesn't believe in it. It got forced to do something inside this budget. Good on you, Sue Moroney. New Zealand First will support the bill.
Louise Upton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am proud to take a call in